In order to understand the current land administration of Wolkait's geographical boundary, we must dive into the history of the region starting around 1700 years ago. By investigating the history of Wolkait, we can fully grasp the illegal border delimitation of the TPLF that started around 1989, by placing the districts of Wolkait, Tegedie, Telemt, and Amhara under Tigray's jurisdiction. Wolkait is situated in northwestern Ethiopia and is bordered by the areas of Tegedie, Telemt, and Amhara. Historically, Ethiopia's provinces have altered in power due to political shifts, yet these four areas have been part of the provinces of Mekelie and Semain, or even their own independent provinces. These two provinces were further merged into the province of Gonder. As of right now, the Gonder province has again further been incorporated into the current administrative region of Amhara. Bordering Gonder is the Tegedie River, which is a natural border that divides Gonder from the province of Tigray. These provinces were administered individually, with the provinces of Mekelie and Semain, or Gonder, being part of the Amhara people, and Tigray for the Tigrayan people. That has always remained consistent over northwestern Ethiopia's history. In his book titled The Wolkait Affairs, Ato Acham Yelle Tamru has broadly assessed the administrative boundaries of Wolkait, Tegedie, Telemt, and Amhara during the Aksumite Empire, which was centered in Tigray. Emperor Izana, who ruled Ethiopia from 320 AD to 360 AD, inscribed detailed administrative and boundary demarcations of Ethiopia. In one of the inscriptions, Izana stated that the tribe of Wolkait, located across the Tegedie River, has agreed to pay tribute and homage to the emperor without waging war, thus illustrating that during the reign of Izana, Wolkait was not under the jurisdiction of the center of Aksum's empire, i.e. Tigray, but was its own distinct province. When assessing the main documents during the Aksumite Empire, they all attest that the territory across the Tegedie is the current-day land of the Amharas. Starting from the middle of the 9th century, Judith, also known as Gudit or Yodit, usurped the scepter of power from the Aksumites. After examining the chronicles written in the days of Judith, Tesfa Habtemariam, in his book written in 1951, states that after 849 AD, the capital of the Ethiopian government was relocated from the Tigray region to the Amhara region across the Tegedie. By the end of the 9th century, Tegedie remained the border between Amhara and Tigray. Emperor Amdetsion ruled Ethiopia from 1314 to 1344, and his royal chronicles describe in detail the territories he ruled. The emperor's chronicles state that the Tegedie River serves as a boundary between the territories of Tigray and Mekelie/Semain, thus a clear distinction between the Tigrayan and Amhara people's provinces. In addition to Amdetsion's chronicles, there is further evidence regarding the border delimitation during the reign of Emperor Zere Yacob, who ruled from 1434 to 1468. During his reign, the Nibruid of Aksum, who was the head priest in the Tigray province, wrote that the Tegedie River bordered Tigray on the west. In other words, meaning that the jurisdiction of the Tigray province does not cross over the Tegedie River. Pedro Paez, a Spaniard who lived in Ethiopia from 1603 to 1622, and a close advisor/confidant to Emperor Susunios, listed the Ethiopian boundaries of his time. Paez wrote that the Wolkait, Tegedie, Telemt, and Amhara territories were administered as lands of the Amhara people, not the Tigrayans. Around that same period, a tutelage to Pedro Paez named Manuel Baradas visited the province of Tigray and resided there for 9 years. He states in his book written in 1634 that Tigray is located at the southern end of the Red Sea, to the west bounded by the Tegedie River. It is clearly stated once again that the Tegedie River is the western boundary of Tigray and not the territories of Wolkait, Tegedie, Telemt, or Humera.
ተከዜ እንደነበር 1634 ላይ የተጻፈ መጽሐፍ ነው። ይሄ ደግሞ ምናልባት የኛ ሰዎች አዛቡት ብለን እንዳንል እንኳን ኢማኑኤል የውጭ ዜጋ ነው። ለየትኛውም ሳይዳ አደርግም በሰዓቱ ኢትዮጵያን ሊጎበኙ በመጡበት ሰዓት ሊያጠኑ በመጡበት ሰዓት ያገኙት መረጃ ሰብስበው ነው የጻፉት ይሄ።
During the reign of Emperor Yostos from 1711 to 1716, his chronicles refer to the opening ceremony of the Lideta Mariam Church in Gonder. Male and female nobility who came across the Tegedie from Tigray were singing in their own traditional way, while the Amhara nobility rejoiced in their own cultural songs. This further iterates how the Tigray people were not in the Gonder province of Amharas, but came across the Tegedie from Tigray. James Bruce, a citizen of Scotland who ventured to Ethiopia, wrote 5 volumes called Travels to Discover the Source of the Nile. Bruce, who came to Ethiopia in the 18th century, has noted in his memoirs descriptively where and when he explored Ethiopia. During his stay, Bruce described the state of Tigray and its boundaries. He described the Merab River, also known presently as the border of modern-day Eritrea, as the border to the north, and the Tegedie River as the border to the west of Tigray. He further reiterated that between the river Tegedie and the Nile westward is Amhara.
Between the river Tegedie and Nile westward is Amhara ብሎ ነው ያስቀመጠው። ስለዚህ የትግራይና የአማራ ወሰን ተከዜ እንደሆነ ነው የሚያስቀምጠው።
የትግሬ ገዢ የነበሩት ራስ ሚካኤል ሶለም ለጀምስ ብሩስ
During Bruce's visit, he encountered the ruler of the Tigray province named Ras Mikael Soul. Bruce was given access to copy numerous books, which included one from Aksum detailing the districts of the Tigray province. Nowhere in that map is the mention of Wolkait, Tegedie, Telemt, or Humera as being administered by Tigray.
በ18ኛው ክፍለ ዘመን ኢትዮጵያን ከ1703 እስከ 1708 ዓመተ ምህረት ድረስ ያስተዳደሩት አጼ ዮስጦስ ናቸው። ንጉሱ ባጻፉት ዜና መዋላቸው የዘመኑን ግዛትና የአስተዳደር ሁኔታ ጠቅሰውት ይገኛል። ከዚህ ውስጥም የልደታ ቤተክርስቲያንን የምረቃ ስነ ስርዓት የጠቀሱበት ዜና መዋላቸው የትግሬ መኳንንት በወይዛዝርት በአገራቸው ዘፈን እየዘፈኑ ተከዜ ወዲያ ያለው በአማራ ዘፈን እየዘፈኑ ሄዱ በማለት ይገልጻል። ያጼ ዮስጦስ ዜና መዋል የሚያስረዳው በ18ኛው ክፍለ ዘመን ተከዜ ወዲያ ማዶ ያለው የትግሬ ማንነት ያለው ተከዜ ወዲህ ማዶ ያለው ደግሞ የአማራ ማንነት ያላቸው መሆኑን ያረጋግጣል።
Additional historical evidence from Tigray can be found from Ras Wolde Selassie, who ruled Tigray from 1788 to 1816. Ras Gugsa of Begge-Midir, one of the main provincial warlords at the time, sought to mobilize the other provincial rulers. He ended up mobilizing the rulers of Gojam, Yaju, and Begge-Midir. In addition, Gugsa wanted to mobilize Tigray. Yet upon hearing this, Ras Wolde Selassie wrote a letter to Ras Gugsa. As ruler of Tigray, he wrote, "Neither you nor your predecessors have ever controlled Tigray. I want to remind you that crossing the Tegedie River to invade Tigray is unthinkable." The testimony of this former Tigrayan ruler clearly asserts that Tigray was indeed located across the Tegedie.
ይሄንን ሲሰሙ ራስ ወልደ ስላሴ 1780 እስከ 1808 ትግሬን የገዙት ለራስ ጉግሳ ደብዳቤ ጻፉላቸው። የትግሬው ገዢ ደብዳቤያቸው እንደዚህ ይሰኛል: እርሶም ሆነ ከርሶ በፊት የነበሩ እንደራሴው አባቶ ትግሬን ተቆጣጥረው አያውቁም። እኔም ላሳስቦት የምፈልገው ትግሬን ለመውረር ተከዜን አቋርጣለሁ ብለው እንዳያስቡ ነው ይላሉ። ይሄ የሚያሳየው ትግሬ የሚገኘው ተከዜን ከተሻገሩ በኋላ እንደሆነ እነዚህ ትግሬ ገዢ የነበሩ ሰው የሰጡት ምስክርነት ነው።
Major Harris, who sought diplomatic relations on behalf of the British Empire, visited and described Ethiopia's borders in 1846. He stated that the state of Amhara stretches from the Tegedie to the Sudanese border and to the Nile. During the rule of Emperor Theodros II in 1867, an English colonel who came to Ethiopia wrote about the different kingdoms and provinces of Ethiopia. He lists them as the following. The other kingdoms, Tigray, Begimidr, Gojam, Beit Amhara, and the provinces of Semain, Tegedie, and Wolkait, thus drawing a distinction between the kingdom of Tigray and the areas of Wolkait and Tegedie.
Wolkait, Tegedie and Telemt በትግራይ ሆነው እንደማያውቁ አንድ በዚህ ዘመን ማስረጃ ነው።
In 1871, Emperor Tekle Giorgis II of Lasta/Wag and Dejazmach Kasa of Tigray, who later became Emperor Yohannes IV, went to battle in Adwa, Tigray. Dejazmach Kasa came out victorious and issued a proclamation regarding the captured soldiers who came from Begimidr and Semain. The proclamation directed the captured soldiers as follows and confirms that Tegedie was the border between Amhara and Tigray. From now on, quickly cross the Tegedie River into Semain/Begimidr and disappear from your enemies who are from Tigray. During the reign of Emperor Yohannes IV, there was a book written by Professor Alice in 1880. The book was entitled The Earth and Its Inhabitants. In the book, Alice stated that the Amhara government provinces are Dambia, Chilga, Begimidr, Guna, Wagara, Telemt, Waldibba, and Wolkait. Therefore, even during the time of Emperor Yohannes IV, it is clear that these areas, namely Wolkait, Tegedie, Telemt, and Amhara, were part of what we call now the Amhara region. In 1872, Emperor Yohannes IV set out to reclaim the land across the Tegedie. At this time, there was a certain lord of the Amhara people named Ras Warenya. He was an ally of Emperor Yohannes IV against the previous emperor Tekle Giorgis II. For his cooperation, Ras Warenya was made governor of Semain, Wolkait, Tegedie, Gonder, Dambia, and Begimidr. Unfortunately, in 1873, Ras Warenya revolted against Emperor Yohannes IV, and as a result, the emperor mobilized his army to Gonder. Without a shot being fired, Ras Warenya was surrounded and surrendered to Emperor Yohannes IV. As mentioned earlier, there was a province called Semain. There is a natural border of a valley called Bambilo, located 30 kilometers north of the city of Gonder. The starting of this valley up to the Tegedie River was defined as the political geographical boundary of Semain. In the administrative category, all the Ethiopian monarchs appointed an administrator saying Bambilo befeses Tegedie bemeles, highlighting the administrative boundaries. Bambilo befeses Tegedie bemeles literally means from Bambilo to the shores of the Tegedie River. Before the conquest of Emperor Yohannes, Ras Warenya was governing the region from Bambilo befeses Tegedie bemeles. When looking at Yohannes IV's letter to Sizek, the French consulate at Metsoa, Eritrea, he went on to say Ras Warenya's people of Wolkait, Tegedie, and the rest of the Amhara people have paid tribute to me. After the reign of Emperor Yohannes IV, Emperor Mekelie II ascended to the throne in 1889. He decided to appoint an Amhara noble to their ancestral land of Bambilo befeses Tegedie bemeles. A man by the name of Gebre Selassie, the minister of the pen, wrote that the Amhara nobility was in full agreement with the decision. During Emperor Mekelie II's reign, there was a determined effort to unite Ethiopia and create a great and prosperous country. As a result, numerous provinces and regions changed administrative hands. But what remained consistent was that the Tegedie River was the border between the Amhara and the Tigray region.
ወልቃይት ጠገዴ ጠለምት የአማራ አካል እንደነበሩ ይልቁንም ከትግራይ ጋር ተከዜ ደንበሩ እንደነበር ብዙ መዛግብት አሉ ማለት ነው።
After Menelik II, there were the rulers of Lijiyasu and Emperor Zoditu, yet no significant administration changes occurred in northwestern Ethiopia. The last emperor, Haile Selassie, who ruled from 1930 to 1974, finally consolidated the areas of Begimidir, Simain, and Dembia into one province taking the name of Begimidir. This province was always referred to as Amhara land. In addition, there is a large body of evidence, such as identification cards, receipts, and letters exchanged between officials, all of which assert that the land of Wolkait, Tegedie, Amhara, and Telemt were all administered as part of the Amhara region.
Look at this receipt. This receipt of 17 birr that our grandfather paid for the Wolkait Tegedie Gonder Road Relief Society. His name was Reverend Gebre Xavier. Formerly, his area was called Setit Humera. The road was from Setit to Tegedie. Setit Humera was part of Gonder, part of the Amhara administration. It was beautiful.
Since the 1930s, the Wolkait Amharas in their territory on the side of the Tegedie River had successfully begun modern farming by clearing forests, cutting down bushes, and fighting wild animals.
Before I was born, this area was a jungle. It was a huge desert, but our ancestors came to Humera and raised oxen. The land that the city of Humera now sits on was the home to elephants and lions. Our ancestors were plowing with oxen. Wild lions were attacking their oxen whenever they got a chance. There was a tree called Kumar. Our forefathers spent the night on a bed they built on the Kumar tree to protect themselves. That Kumar tree became their home. In fact, the name Humera was derived from the Kumar tree.
Did you say the name Humera came from the Kumar tree?
Yes. Then the place started growing slowly. I believe mechanized farming started in Humera around 1943 or 1946.
Did mechanized farming start here?
Yes, mechanized farming started here.
This was the first in Ethiopian history?
Yes, Humera was the first area in Ethiopian history, and also it introduced the sesame seed.
Who were the people that were farming during that time?
People that were farming during that time included Fitawarari Saraba, Fitawarari Yeshiwandam, Dejazmach Golla, and Grazmach Mehret Mekonnen. There were many. Most were Dejazmach. This is the land of Amhara. This is their land.
In fact, what makes Wolkait unique is not only the pioneering mechanized agriculture, but also the fertile land of Wolkait and Tegedie. Its uniqueness made it the best site to start mechanized farming, and thus the indigenous people were also economically better off. Many people from Eritrea, Tigray, Gonder, and Gojam used to come for farm work in the Wolkait, Tegedie, and Humera areas. During that time, there was better development in these areas that attracted people from these various regions. The high administration at that time was the governor of Begimidir and the Simain provinces centered in the provincial capital of Gonder. District governors also lived in the towns of Humera, Wolkait, Tegedie, and Dabat. As official letters written during those times indicated, for the regions of Wolkait, Tegedie, and Humera, Dabat was the central administration location, while for the Simain region, Dabark city was the center.
Humera, Wolkait, and Tegedie, Dabat katama ሆኖ ግን ዳባት አውራጃ እንደነበር ይስሜን ደግሞ ደባርቅ ከተማ ሆኖ ነገር ግን እስከ ጠለምት ድረስ እንደነበር የተጻጻፏቸው ደብዳቤዎች በግልጽ ያሳያሉ።
We are now on the Tegedie Bridge in the town of Humera. This is the bridge that connects Humera and Eritrea.
ድሮ እንግዲህ ወደ ትግራይ የሚያዋስነን በፀሐይ መውጫ ወደ ዋልድባ ጥግ ያዋስነናል የሚያዋስነን ይሄ ወንዝ ነው ይሄ ወንዝ ከላይ ከላሊበላ ስር ጀምሮ ነው የሚመጣ ከላይ ከፍ ሲል ከትግራይ ጋር ማን ነው የሚያዋስን ጸለምት ላይ ላይ ጸለምትና ትግራይን ያዋስናል ይወርድና ከጸለምት ቀጥሎ ዋልድባ ገዳሙን ያዋስንና ከዛ ኋላ ዋልድባ መሬቱን ከጨረሰ በኋላ ወደ ወልቃይት መሬት ይመጣል ይሄ ወንዝ ራሱ ማዶ ማን ያዋስናል ትግራይ ወደዚህ ያማራ መሬት
We set off from Humera to Addi Goshu to see the land that TPLF illegally annexed in the 1980s, killing and uprooting many lives. Large farms are visible in the area. The landscape appears as a combination of varying land features. From Humera, we are now on our way to Addi Goshu to see where the natural borders of Tigray and Wolkait are. In the past, for more than 1,000 years, during the reigns of Emperor Izana, Emperor Amde Tzion, Emperor Zera Yaakov, Emperor Susunios, Emperor Theodros, Emperor Tekle Georgis II, Emperor Johannes IV, Emperor Menelik II, Liji Yasu, Empress Zodi II, Emperor Haile Selassie I, and Derg, the Tegedie River has always been the border demarcation between the Amhara and the Tigrayans.
Where are we now?
This is called the Tegedie River. This is the main border between Wolkait and Tigray, which is the border between Tigray and Amhara. Wolkait was in the Dabat district of Gonder state. The sub-district was Birkuta. This is rich historical evidence.
ይሄ ደግሞ የምታየው ተከዜ ነው ይሄ አምባ ብርኩታት በመክትል ነበር የሚተዳደረው በኃይለ ሥላሴ ድሮ ጀምሮ ማለት ነውና አሁን ይሄ ምን ጊዜ አማራ ነው ያም ትግራይ ነው ይሄ ተፈጥሮ ሀብታችን የምታየው ተከዜ የሚባለው ተፈጥሯዊ ወሰን ነው ይሄ የማይቀየር የማይገፋ ማንም የማይገፋው በታሪክ የማይረሳ ታሪክ ያለው ይሄ ነው
Starting from here, if you look slightly north, it is the Eritrean border. Our border with Tigray is 70 to 80 kilometers. When you look north from here, you see Telemt. Waldeba Monastery is also close by, which is only about 70 kilometers away from where we are.
ስለዚህ እኛ አሁን ልክ ከጠለምት ወደዚህ 70 ኪሎ ሜትር ብቻ ነው የምትሆነው
We are now 125 kilometers from Humera, past Addi Goshu at the Tegedie River. For the past 1600 years, the Tegedie River has been the dividing line between Tigray and Amhara. More importantly, in his book, The Wolkait Case, Achamelle Tamiru has authored a study on the boundaries and administration of Wolkait, Tegedie, Telemt, and Humera. Regarding the border between Tigray and Amhara, the study states that the Tegedie River was the natural border between Amhara and Tigray from 320 AD to 1991 AD. Throughout the passage of time for thousands of years, the Tegedie existed yesterday as it is today. It continues to plow the landmass of Wolkait despite efforts to change the course of the river. The place we are standing on now is called the Tegedie. When you look at it, the landscape itself is different. The land of Wolkait is known as the land of the Amhara. It is a fertile land, but the land on the other side of the Tegedie River is dry. It has nothing. You can see that it looks different in its natural landscape. The land across the Tegedie and the Wolkait side are different in nature. Soil types also vary, and when TPLF started crossing into Wolkait, its intention was to invade and take this fertile land. There is no other reason, and they knew it. They knew very well that it was the land of the Amhara. They wanted to take the land and make it a part of Tigray. This is the obvious truth that everyone knows.
የሚፈልጉት ግን እነሱ ምንድነው መሬቱ ተጠቅመው የትግራይ ህዝብ እንዲጠቀምበት የራሳቸው አካል አድርገው ለመሄድ ያደረጉት አካሄድ ካልሆነ በስተቀር ይሄ ማንም የሚያውቀው ሰው ነው።
We are now 52 kilometers from the town of Telemt and at the Tegedie Bridge. This is the second Tegedie Bridge that connects to Tigray. We've seen the first one on Goshu and the second one on Telemt. Tegedie is not just a river, but also serves as the natural border between Tigray and Amhara. From Tegedie at Telemt, we are now heading west to Wolkait. We descended the rugged mountains of Kaftal and crossed the uncultivated plain fields of Lugudi. We continued on our way along the asphalt road adjacent to Sudan. By forcefully uprooting the people of Wolkait from their ancestral domain, the TPLF realized its dream of controlling a vast, fertile land. The community that pioneered Ethiopia's modern agriculture was robbed of its identity. I am now at the end of Lungudi, which is next to the border of Sudan. Despite the change of emperors and regimes, the vast fertile land from Saroka to the border of Sudan has never been part of Tigray. However, since the TPLF came to power in 1991, it has confiscated this large piece of land from the Gonder state and illegally annexed it as part of Tigray. A field is spread out like a carpet in the area of Lungudi, with a vast landmass as far as the eye can see. From Dansha to Sudan, the land looks primed for agriculture. The past generation knows well the boundaries of Amhara and Tigray. There are thousands who can attest to this fact. Despite TPLF's best efforts to deny the truth, it cannot erase this historical fact.
ለለሰው ተነክ የተከዜን እውነት ለመሻ ብዙ ጥረት ቢያደርግም የትናንትን ያቀጓሎች ማሸነፍ አልቻለም።
Mr. Kasai Balai, who is displaced by TPLF, states, "We have studied our history since birth, and we have a full understanding of the borders of our ancestral lands based on first-hand witness accounts of our forefathers. This is what we know from our history, that the Tegedie district and the district of Wolkait were in Dabat County, which is in the province of Gonder, and has been ruled by Amharas during the reign of past emperors, including as recently as our own generation."
ባለፉት ነገስታትም ይሁን እኛ ከምንወለድም ይሁን ደንበራችን ተከዜ መሆኑ በታሪክ ምናውቀው ይሄ።
An elderly local resident's testimony states, during the Haile Selassie and Derg regimes, this area of Wolkait, Tegedie and Telemt, located between the Tegedie and the Sudan border, has been part of the Amhara province of Mekelie, with its capital at Gonder. Atobayu Bazabbe, a parliamentary member during Haile Selassie's reign, states, "When I was a member of parliament representing Gonder and later as a judge in Tigray, the boundary of Gonder and Tigray was the Tegedie River until TPLF forcefully took over the government. Tigray never had authority beyond Tegedie, and Gonder did not have authority across Tegedie either. During Haile Selassie's reign, the governor of Tigray used to be Prince Mengasha Siyum, and the governors of Gonder province were Colonel Tamrat Yiguzu and General Ndega Tegedie, and neither of them ruled beyond the Tegedie. Historian Achamiele Tamero states, predating 1991, all the historical sources in Ethiopia for the last 1660 years show that the natural border between Tigray and Amhara is the Tegedie River. You will not find any Tigrayan noblemen ruling across the Tegedie. So the absence of Tigray rulers here means that the root is not there. And the historical boundary between Tigray and Amhara has been the Tegedie River.
አማራው መካከል የኖረው የተፈጥሮ ወሰን የተከዜ ወንዝ ነው። አንድም ተከዜን ተሻግሮ ሩት ያለው የትግሬ ባላባት አታገኝ። የትግሬ ባላባት በወልቃይት ምድር እንግዲህ ባላባት እዚህ አካባቢ የትግሬ ባላባት የለም ማለት ሩቱ ስሩ እዚህ አይደለም ማለት ነው። እና በታሪክ የነበረው በትግሬና በአማራው መካከል የነበረው የተፈጥሮ ወሰን የተከዜ ወንዝ ነው።
Colonel Demmeka Zewdu, chair of the Wolkait Committee for the Return of Wolkait to Amhara, states, since the governor of Tigray, Prince Mengasha Siyum, married the granddaughter of Emperor Haile Selassie, he asked the emperor for a favor to give him land in Wolkait. During that time, Dejazmach Adane was the governor of Wolkait and Tegedie. It was a well-known fact that he was a war hero who did not negotiate the boundaries of his rule. Since Haile Selassie knew that fact, he told the prince not to ask him for such a favor ever again. Atobayu Bazab also states, there was no other border of Tigray in the Haile Selassie government because the permanent border is Tegedie. Even during the reign of TPLF, Prince Mengasha Siyum of Tigray has confirmed that he never governed across Tegedie. I used to be a member of Haile Selassie's parliament. During that time, there was never such a question of the Tigray border extending across the Tegedie.
ይሄ በቂ ምስክርነት እኮ ይሄ በነኮሎኔል ታምራት በነራስ መንገሻ ጊዜ ደግሞ እኔ እኮ የህዝብ እንደራሴ ነኝ የፓርላማ አባል ነኝ እኮ ያን ጊዜ እንደዚህ ያለ ጥያቄ የለም.
But this fact did not mean anything to TPLF, who was blinded by Tigrayan supremacy. Filled with a blind hatred of the Amhara people, TPLF removed the historical boundaries and administration limits when it took over the government in 1991. It created a new map where Wolkait, Tegedie, Amhara, and Telemt were annexed to Tigray. The natives of Wolkait were deliberately removed from any investment activities, and their properties were confiscated by any means necessary. Ato Waratao Azanao, a Wolkait Return to Amhara committee member, states, during Haile Selassie's reign, Wolkait Amharas were one of the richest in Ethiopia. Why? Because the Wolkait business people used to generate significant capital from their fertile land. Amhara used to be a modern city. Our forefathers used to say we can have breakfast in Asmara, Eritrea, and lunch in Addis Ababa, because they were able to lease a charter plane and fly to Asmara, then Addis Ababa. They used to be extraordinarily rich. But now, TPLF robbed the wealth of the natives and condemned them to poverty and illiteracy.
ባለጸጎች ሀብታሞች ናቸው እና ይህን ሀብታም ህዝብ ግን ደሃ አድርገው የውላሁን ደሃ አድርገው ገለውታል። አደህይተው አደንቁረው በአደረግነው ጥናት የወልቃይት ጠገዴ ህዝብ የመጀመሪያው መካናይዝድ እርሻ የተጀመረበት አካባቢ ነው። በአፄ ኃይለ ሥላሴ ዘመን በትራክተር የሚታረስበት አካባቢ ነው የነበረው። ሀብታም አካባቢው ወይንም ነባሩ ማህበረሰብ ኗሪው ሀብታም የሚባል የነበረበት ወቅት ነው የነበረው።
The 1991 regime change allowed TPLF to become the new ruler of Ethiopia. Using its authority, TPLF forcefully annexed Wolkait, Tegedie, Humera, and Telemt from the Amhara administration.
Wolkait Tegedie የምታወረጩት የጎረቤት ዘር እንጀራው ላይ ወጡ ላይ ያምርህ
Colonel Demeke states, at that time, Setit Humera used to have over 1,500 tractors and was the first community to use mechanized farming. Openly or secretly, the first thing TPLF did was to take steps to impoverish the Wolkait community by taking away the wealth and self-worth of the community. TPLF did that without any regard to the law of the land. TPLF bullied the natives into submission while bringing settlers from Tigray and arming them with guns, providing ammunition ranging from 220 to 320 rounds for each new settler. Dr. Sisai Misgano, a Wolkait case investigator, says, after TPLF came, one may ask what happened to the communities that live there. It forced them to leave their land, made some disappear without a trace, or even killed them in the open. And for those that survived the oppression, TPLF made sure that they remained impoverished. This is what TPLF did. Therefore, if we look back and see what happened to these people, they used to be so rich, but now either they were murdered or are living in extreme poverty without being able to afford a normal life.
መሬታቸው የለም በኢኮኖሚ ደሃ የሆኑና የዕለት ጉርሳቸው መሸፈን የማይችሉበት ደረጃ ላይ ደርሰዋል.
A local witness states, in 1991, TPLF started redistributing the land of Wolkait, Tegedie, Telemt, and Humera. They first gave the land to the TPLF army members and drove the natives out of their land. The displaced natives attempted farming on uncultivated land by the river. Even then, TPLF continued to harass and levy unreasonable taxes simply to drive the natives out of Wolkait. TPLF distributed 2 hectares of land for each TPLF army member, but left the people of Wolkait, Tegedie, Telemt, and Humera without any land. As a result, our lives have become miserable. Colonel Demeke also states, starting from 1993, TPLF renamed a place called Nate, which is in the Dansha area, to Division, and settled over 6,000 ex-TPLF army members. Before they were settled, they were warned that in order to stay in the settlement, they must kidnap and kill the native Wolkaites. Then the native farmers were forced to leave the area. Following that, starting in 1994, they began settling other Tigrayans. If you saw it when you came from Shirado, Tigray, and crossed to Tegedie, they renamed every place and settled Tigrayans on it. When they did this, it was by displacing the natives. When the natives left by force, they had to leave their farming equipment because they were told they don't deserve to keep any property.
አንዳንዱ እንዳስቀመጠ አንዳንዱም ጠቅልለህ ውጣ እየተባለ በይፋ ይሄ ለትግራይ ሰዎች ነው የሚሰጠው አንተ ፊዳል ሰው ነው ስለዚህ አይገባህም አንተ እየተባለ በይፋ እየነገሩት ነው ገበሬውን ያነሱ.
Dr. Sisai Misgano also states, the first thing TPLF did when it started the invasion was to get rid of the influential people and those who asked any questions regarding it. By forcing the rest of the community, they have caused over 500,000 native Wolkait/Tegedie residents to leave and migrate to other parts of Ethiopia or even other countries. Those who did not leave had to face being kidnapped, being murdered, or live in a state of complete subordination without any property. TPLF went even further and committed several types of crimes in order to convert the area and to make it similar to other Tigray regions.
የመሬት ወረራ ለማድረግ ታሳቢ ተደርጓል.
ወልቃይት ጠገዴን የምታወረጩት የጎረቤት ዘር እንጀራው ላይ ወጡ ላይ ያምርህ.
Amharas were displaced from their farms. Their properties were looted and people were individually tortured. Due to the extreme hardship, most victims have been living in poverty and are miserable.
Dr.
Sisai Misgano also states, the first thing TPLF did when it started the invasion was to get rid of the influential people and those who asked any questions regarding it. By forcing the rest of the community, they have caused over 500,000 native Wolkait/Tegedie residents to leave and migrate to other parts of Ethiopia or even other countries. those who did not leave had to face being kidnapped, being murdered, or live in a state of complete subordination without any property. TPLF went even further and committed several types of crimes in order to convert the area and to make it similar to other Tigray regions.
ይሄ የምናስተዳድረው ትግራይ እንጂ አማራ አይደለም። ስለዚህ ይሄ የትግራይ መሬት ነው። እንዴት ብሎ አይሆንም። ይሄ የአማራ መሬት ነው እንጂ የትግራይ አይደለም፣ እኛም ትግራይ አይደለንም ብለው ብዙ ተከራከረ ህዝቡ። ወልቃይት ወፋርግፍ ከተማ ላይ ሰብስቦ ምንድነው ያሏቸው? እኛ ሰራዊታችን ገብረን እዚህ የመጣነ መሬት ፈልገን እንጂ ሰው ፈልገን አይደለም አላቸው። በተለይ ወንዱ ልቀቅ ከዚህ ሀገር ጥፋ፣ ሴት እንኳን ቢቀመጥ መድቀያ ይሆናል። ይሄው ግልጽ አድርጎ ማን ጸጋይ በርህ ያላሁት ይሄን ያለ በአደባባይ ቆሞ ጸጋይ በርህ እዛ ኋላ መሬቱን ተቆጣጠሩ ያዙ። ከዛ በኋላ መሬቱ የመረጡ የትግራይ ህዝብ ያመጡ ማስፈር ጀመሩ።
By looking at a map presented in 1989 by the Ethiopian Broadcasting Corporation, we can see the shaded parts show the land between the Tegedie and the Sudan border that was taken by TPLF. That land used to be part of the Gonder province, but TPLF redrew the map so that Abdiramitz's, Wolkait, Mansanfia, and others are included as part of Tigray. The TPLF's invasion since 1991 has intensified the land grab and displacement of Amharas. According to an ex-TPLF member, Mekelie, over 500,000 Amharas were forced out of their native land and left the area.
They took the land which was given to me by the Derg regime in 1975. Now I have no land. In addition, they took all of my property. All this happened to me just because I am Amhara.
A displaced local resident states, places such as Turkan, Aidola, Shiglil, Mai Lemen, Ruwasa, Woldeab, Befitsum, Adris, and Zarawit were all given to Tigray settlers. In addition to our farmland, they gave them our homes. The leftover land was also taken to be used for feeding their cattle. More than 500,000 Tigrayans were settled here in Wolkait and the adjacent areas. They removed the Amhara from Wolkait. This was an atrocity that displaced more than 500,000 Amharas from their ancestral birthplace. To make room for the 500,000 Tigrayans, the Amharas had to be removed and displaced by Tigrayans. As per Mekelie report, in the past 27 years when the TPLF government had been in power, they brought Tigrayans and settled them on the ancestral land of the Amharas, uprooting the Amharas completely. What you currently find to be registered landowners are the 500,000 new Tigrayan settlers brought by the TPLF government from central Tigray. Having their land confiscated, the indigenous farmers couldn't tend their livestock for the lack of grazing land. Their lives became a living hell. Living in Wolkait turned out to be an endless walk through a desert. A local priest explains, our wide expanse of land was taken for development by TPLF. Some of it was given to the group called Division. They told us not to cross those lands. If any of our cattle cross to those plots of lands, we will be cited. Yet they can bring their cattle as they please and graze anywhere on our land. A Dansha resident explains, for Amhara people, they will put a heavy land use tax so no one can work. If the taxes that one used to pay was 200,000, they will raise it to 700,000. When one complains, they will drag the case. In about 3 years, they will demand 2.1 million, which no one can pay. Later, they confiscate the land, bring someone from Tigray, and give that land to them for free.
Traditionally, the Wolkait people from the highlands came to the lowlands and used to farm the lowlands a lot. TPLF made a rule that no one can go to the lowlands from Wolkait, They removed those farmers, brought people from Tigray, and gave them those lands.
They're legal farmlands?
Yes. For example, at a place called Shalala, a man named Ato Yirsao Demesis had owned 800 hectares of land since the 1950s, and he was paying taxes for 52 years. TPLF confiscated his land and sent him away. They brought people from Tigray and gave that land to those people for free. His former land is still there.
Wolkait, Tegedie,
The Wolkait, Tegedie, and Telemt people suffered greatly under TPLF. TPLF inflicted more pain and suffering than a foreign invading force could have inflicted. In his own native land and property, he was forced to be a refugee. Life became a walk on a string of death. The Wolkait resident explains, "The land we used to farm was taken away and given to the Tigrayan settlers. We became landless. Now we live in a rented place in Dansha. Even if you want to rent and farm, the fact that our ID says that we are from Wolkait results in us being mistreated. We were always worried and fearful about the mistreatment that we were facing. We have faced a lot of injustices and atrocities." Former soldier explains, "The land grab took place and we were not allowed to move past our road. We didn't have a place to take our livestock. We were left with a small piece of land for subsistence farming, which we barely survive on. There are a lot of problems." Ato Bayu Bazab explains, "In Wolkait, TPLF forced out the natives. Isn't this a violation of human rights? Is this the right of Ethiopians? If you don't fight this, when are you going to fight as an Ethiopian? What worse thing did the invading Italian forces do? Italy didn't say move out of your land. They just said we would like to colonize you. TPLF said move out of your ancestral land. Where can one go from his ancestral place? Couldn't this be a reason for hatred? Couldn't this be a cause for war?" The land grab across the Tegedie River was distributed for the supporters of TPLF from Tigray and for their families. Ways to remove the Wolkait people was by labeling them as feudal and calling them anti-TPLF. They took their land by force and redistributed it to the people that TPLF liked. TPLF weakened the local people's economy, took away their political participation, and silenced them. That was one way of carrying out the land grab by TPLF.
የአካባቢውን ሰዎች በኢኮኖሚ የተዳከሙ በፖለቲካ ተሳትፎ የሌላቸው በማድረግ ሙሉ በሙሉ ከወልቃይት ሰቲት ሁመራ ጠገዴ እስከ ጠለምት ያለው አብዛኛው ቦታ በህዋት ሰዎች እንዲያዝ ተደርጓል እና ይሄ ትልቅ የመሬት ወረራ ተፈጽሟል ማለት ነው።
The project
Ato Zelalem Mengistu, a federal police deputy commissioner, states, "The projects TPLF works on sometimes looks at one issue and sometimes at more issues. One of them being resource mobilization and utilization. If you go to the Benishangul region, you'll see resources like gold and other mineral resources. When you come here to Wolkait, you'll find vast fertile land for farming. When there are a lot of resources and riches, TPLF comes with projects supported with huge finance, and they remove the people from their ancestral land by killing and forcefully removing their native people and taking it as their own. The killings, like this one, happen to fulfill their big project of stealing resources. Generally speaking, the land grab is one of the ways stealing resources and riches consolidated their power and enriched themselves."
እነዚህ ፕሮጀክቶች በሙሉ ፓኬጅ ናቸው። ከዚህ የሚመነጭ ነው ዋናው ፍላጎታቸው ብዬ አስባለሁ።
ወልቃይት ጠገዴን አምታወረጩት የጎረቤት ዘር እንጀራው ላይ ወጣ ወጡ ላይ አመርህ።
The land that TPLF forcefully took away from the Amhara people of Wolkait, Tegedie, Telemt, and Humera is the place that I am standing at. This area is vast and fertile land. TPLF took over this land forcefully from Amhara natives for their own use and gave it to the people who came from Tigray. TPLF's crimes and injustices included religious institutions. Citizens who live in Wolkait, Telemt, Tegedie, Dansha, and Humera were having a hard time worshipping their religion. Religious places were influenced by TPLF politics.
በነጻነት ማራመድ ፈታኝ ሆነባቸው። የአምልኮ ስፍራዎች በፖለቲካ ተቃኙ።
ህወሓት ማለት
A local priest states, the other thing that TPLF did was, when we are praying, we prostrate for St. Mary's icons that are in Ethiopia, Egypt, Rome, and Syria. TPLF people would come and say that you have to get rid of Ethiopia and replace it with Tigray. We responded that we mention Egypt, Rome, and Syria, so why not Ethiopia? And they said Ethiopia should be removed from the prayers and replaced with Tigray.
ሶሪያና ግብጽ ሲጠራ ሮም ሲጠራ እንዴት ኢትዮጵያ ሁለተኛ ደረጃ መግባት አለበት አልናቸው። እኛ ደግሞ ማለት ነው አይሆንም አሉ ምሁራን አሉ። አይሆንም ኢትዮጵያ እኛ ጋር አይደለም። ኢትዮጵያ ድንጋይ ይሄ የሚባል ነገር የለም። የትኛው ኢትዮጵያ ማለት ድንጋይ የትኛው ነው? እንጨቱ የትኛው ነው? ኢትዮጵያ ማለት የለም ትግራይ ነው አሉን።
TPLF thinks getting rid of Amhara, the national language from Wolkait, would be the only basis for Amhara's existence. Thus, the solution was to get rid of Amhara and remove it from religious services.
To extinguish Amharic, every church was forced to use the Tigrinya language only. Everything is in Tigrinya, so we had to go back home from church without finishing the service. They would say, why don't you wait until all the services are completed? We don't understand the Tigrinya language, so we had to leave the religious service early.
A local priest states, we were forced to teach in Tigrinya. We were to practice Tigrinya and read in Tigrinya, but people do not understand it. Our people know Amhara. They brought us the Tigrinya Bible and issued that all Wolkait people must be taught in Tigrinya. We were forced to teach everything in Tigrinya. I told them that in Wolkait, the people speak Amhara. And they said, you in Wolkait and Raya say this. We want you guys to leave the land. This land is Tigray's now.
ትግርኛና ግዕዝ እኮ አንድ ነው። ትግርኛ ተንቆ ሳይሆን ስለሚመሳሰል ዛሬ በአማርኛ ቢተረጉምን አለ። አሁን ወልቃይት እኮ የሚቀናን አማርኛ ነው አብዛኛው ስላቸው ወልቃይትና ራያ እኮ ናችሁ እነሱ ታደርጉን ልቀቁልን የኛ ቦታ ነው አሉና ማለት ነው። በግድ በካድሬ ተጨነ ግን ከቤተ ክርስቲያን ውስጥ ግን እንድንወደው ሳይሆን እንድንጠላው ነው ያስገደዱ።
A Dansha priest states, being forced by TPLF to use Tigrinya in church made us hate the Tigrinya language. The church doesn't care about languages. The church believes that all languages equally belong to it. But we have to serve with the language of the choice of the people. What the people can understand is what we should have been teaching in. At church, they shame you, they label you names. People who live around here are put down and have been affected morally. They have killed their hope. They are afraid of name-calling. There are times where people do not come to church at all. There was a heavy influence. We passed through a lot of problems. A Muslim Dansha resident states, during TPLF, there was no freedom of speaking the language of your choice. They say you can speak your language, but in practice, Tigrinya was favored. They wanted you to only speak Tigrinya. The Islam religion is written in Arabic. If the dominant religion was Islam, they would have asked us to do service in Tigrinya.
ቋንቋው እንዲሆን አይፈልግም ነበር። ራሱ አሁን እስልምና ሃይማኖት አረበኛ ነው የተጻፈው። አረበኛ ሆኖት ነው እንጂ መቀየር ስለማይቻል ነው እንጂ እሱ በትግርኛ እንዲሆን ፍላጎት ነበር እና የሱ ስራ ጭራሽ አይገናኝም።
The Amhara identity in Wolkait, Telemt, Humera, and Tegedie was considered a crime. The sword sheathed by TPLF to destroy Amhara reached across all these areas. The Dansha priest states, if you say I am an Amhara or you sing in Amhara, a lot of people have been imprisoned in Humera for saying such things. We were afraid that they would be executed. They were too young to be in prison. TPLF has worked a lot to weaken the people's psychology. A Muslim Dansha resident says, because we are Amharas from Wolkait or Tegedie, we have suffered a lot. We didn't have any rights. We were considered second-class citizens. They won't let us work. Whether in religion or in business, we have dealt with a lot of problems. A local resident states, we were told that from now on, if you speak Amhara, you will be punished. We passed through a time where kids were expelled from school and were beaten or other injustices were done to them for speaking Amhara. We were forced to identify ourselves as Tigrayan. We were not allowed to sing or listen to Amhara music.
ከዛ ባሻገር ግድ ትግራይ ነን በሉ ተገደዱ አማርኛ ሙዚቃ እንዳይዘፈን በትግርኛ ነው ብለው አስገደውናል።
The other injustice that TPLF has done to the Wolkait and Tegedie people was TPLF's cultural invasion. The cultural background of the society in these areas is with the Amhara people from Gonder. In weddings, burials, and other ceremonies, the culture of these areas is very similar to Gonder. But TPLF forced the people to have only Tigrinya music during weddings.
የትግራይ ባህል ብቻ እንዲጠቀሙ በሰርግ ጊዜ ዘፈኑ ትግረኛ እንዲሆን አማርኛ ቋንቋ መናገር እንዳይቻል ተደርጓል።
ወልቃይት ጠገዴን አምታወረጩት የጎረቤት ዘር እንጀራው ላይ ወጣ ወጡ ላይ አምር።
TPLF used schools as the main tool to cleanse the Amhara people from Wolkait and Tegedie. Schools where knowledge is given and the future generation is built were instead used to teach about ethnicity and tribalism. At their young age, there was a huge effort to make them lose their identity. TPLF wrote propaganda and hatred in the brains of youngsters.
They teach our kids songs about Tigray only. They tell them not to sing about the Ethiopian national anthem, which is called Citizenship Pride. If they sing about Citizenship Pride, they told them to stop that and instead sing about Tigray. If the kids cannot sing about Tigray, their parents would be summoned to the school. They tell their parents, if your kid doesn't know how to sing about Tigray, you will be imprisoned or killed.
The Dansha priest states, people have natural rights such as freedom. There are two main things, democratic rights and human rights. You should wear whatever you want to wear. If you wear a t-shirt with Prime Minister Abiy's picture, you are not allowed to get into school. You have to go back home. Your shirt will be torn. If your notebook has a picture of Abiy, that will also be torn. The kid will be beaten and sent home. You will be insulted as chauvinist or narrow-minded. To force the people of Wolkait, Tegedie, Telemt, and Amhara into another identity by changing Amhara names and social norms, the hate that has been there for years is flowing like a stream under TPLF's feet. A Dansha resident states, let alone to say I am an Amhara, if you have an Amhara name, you will not be treated equally in any offices. If you go to any office and speak Amhara, the office is not going to serve you and will not do anything for you. A local resident states, if you sing/dance in Amhara, it is considered a crime. When they brought new settlers, they changed the name of places from Amhara to Tigrinya. They changed Marhoha to Hagar Salam. They changed Indat Tarash to Wahadat. And they changed Zero Abit to Mawayne. A former soldier states, they have changed our language too. Amhara is different from Tigrinya. They say lachimmi, we say lam for a cow. When a guy said lam for a cow, they were telling him not to speak Amhara. They asked, why are you calling the cow lam? Why don't you say lachimmi? Atobayu Bazab states again, they were saying any Amhara speaking person is not allowed to live in Wolkait. How could this be? Can anybody tell you that you are not allowed to speak your own language in your own land? In your own land? Amhara is something to be proud of. One of the languages that has their own alphabet is Amhara. You can't speak and write in Amhara? This is what TPLF's democratic rights are.
democratic right የሚባለው
ማህበራዊ ሁኔታ ላይ የፈጸመው ጫና አለባበስ
TPLF has had a heavy influence on social life. Wearing Gonder's customary clothes of traditional jano and having an Ethiopian flag were not allowed. One of the customs in the area is to have an Ethiopian flag during burial processions, but TPLF outlawed having the flag during such ceremonies. This kind of influence was practiced during TPLF's time. During a burial procession, there is shillala and fukara in Amhara culture as a process of grieving for one's loss. But the Amhara people, especially from Armachoho, Tegedie, and other surrounding areas, were not allowed to practice their culture. The reason being, they said, was that it was different from Tigrayan culture. The main reason is to influence the identity of the people and to force the people to be Tigrayan. The cultural wealth of the Amhara has been eradicated for Tigrayan supremacy.
ማንነትን መጫን ነበርና አንዱ ወይንም ትግሬ ማድረግ ነበርና አካባቢውን አላማው ስለዚህ ይሄ ባህላዊ እሴት እንዲጠፋ ተደርጓል
እኔ ሳማራ ነኝ የጊዮን ፍሬ ነኝ
Wolkait, Tegedie, Telemt, Dansha, and Humera's businesses were totally controlled by the Tigrayans. Free business activity was as far away as the sky. A local resident states, the tax for Amhara businesses was levied at a higher rate compared to Tigrayan businesses. I have worked as a trade association official. They told me to be a TPLF member or else I can't be an official. I refused to be a TPLF member. I was also arguing for fair taxation for businesses. Finally, I was stopped from being an official of the trade union, even though the traders had elected me. They told me that you are not needed here, as you are from the Amhara ethnic group. A Muslim Dansha resident states, when you get your business license, they will ask you where you are from and your ethnicity. If you are Amhara, they will try to stop you from starting a business. If you are Tigrayan, the tax levied will be from 300 to 500 birr, while if you are Amhara, from 20,000 to 100,000 birr. The main goal for this happening is to get rid of Amhara from this land.
ናይል ለምንድነው አማራን ከዝች ምድር ለማጥፋት
ወልቃይት ጠገዴን አምታወረጩት የጎረቤት ዘር እንጀራው ላይ ወጣ ወጡ ላይ አመርህ
To restrict the freedom of the youth, TPLF passed new local laws. The youth was forced to ignore its Amhara identity and to have very low self-esteem.
አዲስ ማንነት እንዲሸከም በኃይል ተገደደ
A local resident explains, TPLF caused unbearable difficulty for the youth. It forced the youth to submit to the system by creating economic and psychological hardships. Those who chose not to live under absolute domination migrated out of the area. Others who tried to resist ended up arrested or dead. The rest had to live under extreme suffering and subordination. A local resident explains, wearing a shirt that TPLF doesn't agree with is a cause for being beaten up or arrested. Several young boys were spanked with their shirts off and poured water on them just for claiming to be Amhara. When I asked why they poured water on them while spanking them, they said it is to make them feel the pain. One of my young relatives has lost all his 5 fingers as a result.
እኛ አማራን በማለታቸው እንጂ በሌላ ምንም ስርቆት የለም ምንም አይነት ስራ የላቸውም እነዛ ልጆች ተገርፈዋል አሁን ቅርብ እንኳን ራቆታቸው አድርገው ውሃ ያርከፈከፉ ለምንድን ነው ውሃ የሚርከፈከፈው ስላቸው እንዲያማቸው ሰውነታቸው እንዲሰማቸው ነው የተባለ ግፍ ነው የተፈጸመ እና ያ ልጅ አሁን ዘመዳችን ነው የኛ ጣቱ ሁሉ ወልቋል 5 ጣቱ ልጁ እንደወለቀ ነው ያለው ራሱ
Ato Kasai, who was displaced by TPLF, explains, the TPLF is extremely cruel and tortures people worse than wild animals. They torture you by pulling fingernails out, taking eyes out, hanging water bottles on men's genitalia, by extreme beating, demoralizing, and eventually killing the individual. Withstanding all types of harassment, torture, and killing, some residents continued the resistance movement to restore their Amhara identity. As a result, several of them stayed in jail permanently. A local resident, Ato Retta Gabriyesu, states, some remain jailed here, some jailed in Gonder, and some went to a jail called Kilinto near Addis Ababa. Others were jailed in Mekelie, Tigray. Those in Mekelie faced all types of torture unless they denied their Amhara identity and identified themselves as Tigrayan. Some men have become infertile as a result of extreme torture and castration. Women were raped and faced all types of sexual torture as well.
አሁን በግልጽ ልገልጻቸው ይችላል ከጓደኞቻችን ጋር ታስሮ የነበር አስቻለው እንዳይወልድ ነው ተደርጎ የነበር ያ ጀግናው የተገደለው ማለት እንዳይወልድ አድርገው የመሰለ ሴት ብልት ያባላሹበት ጊዜ ነው የነበረ በህወሓት ማለት
Ato Malaku Radde, who was tortured in jail, recalls, "What happened to me in Kilinto when I told them that I am Amhara is something so gruesome which I cannot say in public. Most of us have faced physical and mental suffering, which are beyond explanation." Ato Aschalo Abraha, who was arrested and tortured, states, "My friend and I are from the Balesa area in Gonder. We were arrested in January 2016 at a place called Saturday Market in Gonder. They jailed us in Addis Ababa at Mekelie jail by transporting us through Humara and into Tigray. While jailed, we were constantly harassed and tortured. They insulted and demoralized us by saying, 'How can a donkey rule a country? A donkey only knows how to feed itself from a grassland. Can you push this wall? TPLF is like this wall. You cannot push it, can you?'"
እስኪ ግፋው ሄግም ህወሓት ማለት ይሄ ነው ተነስ ግፋው ሄግም ግፋው እስኪ ይፈርሳል ህወሓት ይሄ ማለት ነው
Their body was slashed like old cloth and completely damaged. They faced immense suffering that is disturbing to any listener. Ato Aschalu states, "They used to force us to lie down on an asphalt road with our clothes off. Then they would splash us with cold water while spanking us just because we said we are Amhara. They smashed my head to the wall, and as a result, I was unconscious for 3 days. I had to be fed by others since I was unable to drink or eat by myself. They also used to tie our hands on top of a bar and hung bottles full of water attached to our testicles. There is no type of torture they did not do to us. Now, one of my eyes is legally blind, and so far I did not get medical treatment since I cannot afford it. Also, I have a mental condition that was manifested due to the torture where I am in an unstable emotional state."
በህወሓት የደረሰብኝ ችግር አንድ አይኔ ያው እንዳይሰራ ሆናል ህክምናም እስካሁን አላገኘሁም ህክምናም ለመሄድ አቅም አላገኘሁም ቦታ አልነበረኝም እስከዛሬ ከፍተኛ ደግሞ የአእምሮ ችግር አድርሰውብኛል አሁን ከፍተኛ የአእምሮ ችግር አድርሰውብኛል ያልሆነ ከሆነ ጭራሽ ትግስት አእምሮ ሌላ ነገር ነርቭ ነገር ነው የሚሆን በጣም የአእምሮ ችግር አድርሰውብኛል
The continuation of the unbearable suffering by TPLF resulted in more resistance and struggle for freedom. When its fall from power became near, TPLF kidnapped Amhara farmers from Humara and took them away.
I heard that my father was one of the freedom fighters. He was a rich farmer and investor. Both my father and husband used to be harassed, insulted, and ridiculed by the local administrators, the district officers, and higher-level authorities for speaking and listening to Amharic music, and also for claiming to be Amhara.
3 ሰዓት 2 ሰዓት የሚቆምበት የሚጨፈጨፉበት በቃ በደንብ የሚሰደውበት ነው ጊዜ ያሳለፉት ስንት ጊዜ
Ato Turune Lemlem states, "TPLF has been oppressing and exploiting us since day one. They took over the area by force, took all our land and properties, and removed the historical boundary. We have been living in constant suffering."
They said, "You cannot sleep while we stand all night." They brought my husband home, hitting him first on his forehead with a gun saddle. They then tied his hands behind his back. These young TPLF members were beating him up with everything they had until he became completely exhausted. They kept shouting, "You Amhara supporters will lose all your belongings. We will have it all." After taking my husband, they came and took my father Monday night in the dark. Tuesday morning, we went to the nearest jail and asked, but were told they were not there. On Wednesday, we went around to every jail in town and the surrounding area and asked for them, but no jail admitted of having them.
ማክሰኞ ጧት ስንጠይቅ እስር የሚባል የለም። ረቡዕ ደግሞ ተመልሰን በየቦታው የገጠሩ ፖሊስ ጣቢያ የከተማውም ስንጠይቅ የሉም ተባሉ። አደባ ሄደዋል ተባሉ።
Ato Turune also states, they forced us to accept that we are Tigrayan instead of Amhara. We had nowhere to go. We were helpless.
አስገድዶ ያዙን። ከምን ይደርሳለን?
Suffering from absolute brutality and cruelty, the Humara Amhara community was forced into submission after the killing and displacing of their relatives and well-known heroes.
When people ask for the whereabouts of some of the jailed, saying that someone has seen them, the jailers ask, who are they? When the names such as Amara Turune, Tsahaye Atalai, Jamal Tajine from Kaftia area, Awak Asiyum from Wolkait, and several others are mentioned. First, they were not willing to reveal who they are, but after they told them that they just wanted to see their body, even if they're dead, they took them to an area where their dead bodies were scattered. The remains of my father and husband were found there among 6 other bodies. While transporting them for killing, some eyewitnesses saw that they were throwing them out of a car, loading them back with their hands tied, beating and torturing every part of their body. I heard that my father's head was swollen and bleeding from the beating. My husband was also soaked with his own blood from repeated torture. While being tortured on the way to the killing field, they were also without food and drink until they finally killed them.
ባለቤቴ በዚህ ግባሩ ሳይቀር ይሄ እጃቸው እንደበሰበሰ በዚህ ደም ጥብጥብ ያለ እንደታሰረ በቀጭን ገበድ ነው ተገለው የተደገኘው።
Ato Turune reflects on his son. My son knew only hard work, never harmed anyone. They killed him just for being Amhara. He was like a father and mother to me. Since my wife was also sick, he was our only help. No one should experience what my family and I went through.
ሁሉ ሀገር የማውቀው ለወንድምልህ እድሜ ነው። ባለቤቴ እኮ እየታመመች አባቴ እናቴ እሱ ነው የሚጠውረኝ ማበላኝ ማለት እሱ ነው። አሁን ግን ያው ከቤቱ አንስተው አማራን አጠፋለሁ ያው የጠፋን ያለ ወስደው ገደሉት። በጣም ችግር ነው ያደረሰኝ። ለሰው አይስተው ምን አደርጋለሁ? ለክፉ ማንዳኛለሁ።
ያው ሁመራ የዚህ ሁሉ መነሻ ለምን አማርኛ ተናገራችሁ?
The TPLF people used to ask the locals, why do you claim that Wolkait and Tegedie belongs to Amhara? Why do you claim to be Amhara? My father used to tell me that when they came to our area for the first time, they killed all the famous noble natives who had the titles such as Dajazmach, Kenyazmach, and Grazmach in the area. And now, just before they lost the war and left the area, they killed my husband and my father.
The depth of brutality by TPLF did not even end as it was dying as an organization. When retreating from military defeat, TPLF showed its blind hatred for the Amhara people in Mai Kadra by massacring them in an unparalleled cruelty in the history of Ethiopia. The brutality inflicted on me is undeniable. The TPLF killing squad arrived and beat me. They hit me with a machete. They also cracked my head. I didn't know why they hit me. My whole body was covered in blood. They left me because they thought I was dead. If they thought I was breathing, they would have killed me with no hesitation.
Look, my head is full of stab wounds. Here he stabbed me in 3 or 4 places with a knife. They left me there because they thought that I was dead.
Mai Kadra has exposed the brutal conspiracy of the TPLF. It has shown that the TPLF is a cruel, inhumane group. As the people that TPLF massacred are innocent citizens who had no political involvement. They were regular people, daily laborers who came to the area in search of livelihood. It's a continued manifestation of the atrocities TPLF committed throughout its tenure. This is a desperate act of a hopeless organization counting its last days. At Mai Kadra, the TPLF showed us the depth of its brutality, barbaric identity, and its final desperate animalistic response as the end of its existence fastly approaches.
ሰው ጣር ላይ ሲደርስ የሚያደርገውን አያውቅም። ስለዚህ ህዋትም ጣር ላይ በነበረበት ሰዓት ነው እንግዲህ የነበረውን አረመኔያዊነት የመጨረሻ ደረጃ ማይ ካድራ ላይ ያሳየን ብዬ ነው ማስበው። አባባን በዶማኔ በባፈ መጥረጋ የተፈለጣችሁ በሳተነ በልባል የተቃጠላችሁ
As a result of TPLF's bloodlust ethnic-centric brutality, innocent civilians were slaughtered like lamb during the massacre of Mai Kadra. Their blood was shed in public with reckless disregard for their humanity. They cut us down like animals. Normally, you will be afraid to kill the animal you raised. When we kill animals for food, we ask for the word of God for his divine permission. Even animals are revered. But these people are different. We know them. We live together. We ate together. At that time, I did not expect them to be cruel and do what they did to me. This is beyond the imagination of a human being, something that has never been seen or heard of. A government official explains, it's very emotional and heartbreaking. The massacre of civilians, especially innocent civilians, is unbearable. This appears to be premeditated and a planned act. It is heartbreaking to hear about the killing of innocent civilians in this way. I've never seen such a story in my life. It's a sad story. This is not a coincidence or accidental, but a planned project. In many places in Ethiopia, we have repeatedly stated that such atrocities were carried out by the TPLF's direct orders. That was repeated here again.
ቦታዎች ላይ በኢትዮጵያ በአገራችን በተለያዩ አካባቢዎች ላይ የዚህ አይነት የግፍ ጭፍጨፋ በእነሱ ቀጥተኛ ትዕዛዝ ሲፈጸም የነበረ መሆኑ በተደጋጋሚ የምንገልጸው የነበረ ነው። አሁንም እሱን ነው እዚህ ቦታ ላይ የተደገመው።
The unspoken heinous brutality speaks volumes about the fact that TPLF is a group obsessed with dark desires. Young children were killed in this horrific massacre.
They came and beat him. They beat him as he sat in the house and asked him to get out. When he got out, they killed him. After killing him, they threw his body into the fire. They killed Abid Tsagay and burned him there. One of our neighbors was beaten when she tried to save him. Her hands were badly hurt. One of her hands bent the wrong way from the beating. The man was burned. They burned his body.
The government official also explains, not only the Ethiopian people, but we also want the international community to be aware of this horrific act. Contrary to what TPLF claims, this is purely the massacre of innocent civilians in front of their homes by the TPLF's trained militia called Samre. The overwhelming evidence we collected, the story of the survivors, the testimony of the victims' families, neighbors, and even long-time Tigrayan residents in Mai Kadra have all testified about this undeniable brutality. Mai Kadra was engulfed in the flames of evil. Anyone identified as Amhara was isolated and brutally killed. Their noble bodies were thrown into the fire.
It's Abid Tsagay. The first one to be burned was Abid Tsagay. The place is called Gonder, so they burned the house to the ground and they threw his corpse into the fire. This is to destroy the race. This is done to eliminate the Amhara race.
But you came in 1975 during the Derg regime?
Yes, I came in 1975 during the Derg era. TPLF killed my children's father also.
So TPLF killed your brother and killed your husband. They have also taken your land. The TPLF has done all of this?
Yes, all this has happened. The injustice committed on me is bondless.
I am currently in Mai Kadra in an area called Gumb Sefer, In this location, ethnic Amharas were massacred and their homes and property were confiscated. Overall, what I saw in Mai Kadra is deeply heartbreaking. Innocent civilians lost their lives. Their property was destroyed. Their sanctified corpses were denigrated and burned.
All this happened to us because we are Amhara. Our church is the same with the people that killed us. We live together, we ate together, we have no difference. They killed us because we are Amhara. One of the TPLF men, named Tesfakiros, was bragging that he was going to destroy us. He told us we are remnants of the Derg. Tesfakiros was openly threatening that he alone is sufficient to kill us all without needing any support. The massacre unleashed on us is because we are Amharas. It is because of our Amhara identity. The TPLF officials used to threaten us. They were saying that Amhara will not live with them. But we believe that it is our homeland, our ancestral place.
The government official explained, the massacre committed at Mai Kadra is the same as what happened in Rwanda. It was ethnic cleansing. Every citizen, regardless of ethnicity, has the right to live in Ethiopia with respect and dignity. The right to freedom of movement is guaranteed by the Constitution. The injustice and atrocities that happen here is wrong and beyond comprehension.
ለማንኛውም ሰው ቢሆን የሚገባ ተግባር አይደለም.
He further says, the number of people who lost their lives in the Mai Kadra genocide is increasing day by day. An investigation by the Human Rights Commission confirmed that more than 1,000 civilians had been killed. More than 600 died in one day, with corpses on the ground everywhere. The government official also explains, I say the number of people killed is more than the report of the World Humanitarian Commission. The issue is not the 600 number. The number is much higher. I have now heard that various bodies are being found in multiple places. There were bodies that you have seen from the places you were reporting genocide. Corpses are found in Barakat, along the banks of the river, and in the bushes. The current situation shows that the total number of people killed will be much higher.
መንገድ ላይም ሰሞኑን የነበረው ሁኔታ የሚያሳየው ቁጥሩ ከዚህ በላይ ሊጨምር የሚችል ነው.
We are now in the town of Mai Kadra, where the massacred Amharas are buried. It is a site of many burials. Even if the total count of the genocide victims is not known yet, it is clear a large number of people were massacred. Since February of 1975, the TPLF has been campaigning against the Amhara and portraying the Amhara people as its historical enemy. But the horrific massacre of innocent people in Mai Kadra is the ultimate manifestation of the depth of the brutality of the TPLF and will be forever remembered. TPLF has dreamed for years of eliminating the Amhara from the face of the earth and has displaced hundreds of thousands of Amharas from their native land. Wolkait Amharas have endured unimaginable suffering for countless years while holding high their indomitable aspiration for justice.
My son fell here. He died here, but his body was never found. The whereabouts of his body is unknown. I had only one child. I lost my child. I lost my child and here I am. I don't want to live. This is not living. I can't get over this. I am alone and I will live a life of misery and sorrow until the end of my time.
የልጄ ነገር ሳታወጣልኝ ብላለሁ።